week, Algoma Steel announced it had issued layoff notices to about 1,000 workers, citing tariff pressures as a main factor in the decision. The company's CEO said that both governments knew the direction the company was headed, with some in the opposition parties suggesting the loan, which was provided alongside a $100 million loan from the Ontario government, should have had job security conditions attached. Now let's discuss with political analyst Lori Turnbull. Thanks for joining us this morning, Lori.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So let's start by talking about the government's loan to Algoma Steel, despite knowing about those layoffs we spoke about just now.
Right. I mean, I think both the federal government and the Ontario government are having to explain why did we go through with these huge loans, despite the fact that there would still be job losses. But at the end of the day, imagine if there weren't. Imagine if there were no job losses, the federal government had lent more money, the Ontario government had lent more money to say, we're going to make sure there's no disruption in this sector at all for this particular company. Then they'd have to go to explain to every other sector that's been affected by the trade war with the U.S. and the tariff situation, where is their blank check, essentially? And so I suspect the decision was around, how can we make this a viable industry? How can we give enough support so that they're able to keep going and they're able to pivot? But at the same time, there is going to be some loss. So now it's the political job of both the federal government and the province to explain why they cast the balance the way they did.
Lori, Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu says the goal here is to save the steel sector. Is this loan going to help? And what options does the government have now to protect workers moving forward?
Right. I mean, so I think there are going to be a few things. I mean, they do have some temporary measures in place, for example, to try to fortify workers who are affected by these sorts of things. And I think that, there are programs to help people reskill, move to other sectors if that's what they want to do. But I think the point that the minister is making around making sure that this particular industry stays viable. And so then that's connected to all kinds of other things, including growth in the defense sector and making sure that there is some other market, including the Canadian market, for steel to be able to sell to. And so when Ontario Premier Doug Ford has talked about this, for example, he's talked about federal initiatives around, again, growing the defense industry, new pipelines, and those sorts of things, providing a domestic market for Canadian steel, which would then, kind of fortify that domestic industry and making Canada strong and all the things that the federal government says it wants to do.
Lori, let's switch gears to Carney's trip to Washington for that World Cup draw. How significant is it that Carney got some time with the president, and what do we think they spoke about?
I mean, it looked like, for the most part, to me anyway, it looks like the focus was the World Cup. The focus is on the soccer. And it was a good moment for them in the sense that the three leaders sat there, and by all accounts, it looks peaceful. It looks like they had a fun time. Clearly, FIFA is interested in making Donald Trump happy, and so he got his Peace Award. And, it looks like everybody had a fun time. But is that going to move the needle in terms of trade and tariffs? We don't know that. Against the backdrop of this event, there was also, the U.S. has started to have hearings about the future of the trade deal between the three countries. And the president is hearing from people in the industry, as well as experts and people who understand the economic implications of this deal. He's not hearing, we want to rip this down and get rid of it, right? He's hearing, well, maybe we could make this better. There could be some changes, but not throw the whole thing out. And so I think the bigger question is whether that kind of advice is going to get through to a president who's seeing a bit of a decline in his approval ratings these days.
Okay, thank you so much, Lori. That is Lori Turnbull, political analyst.